Great events create great brands, and it takes a village to put on an event that engages, excites, and connects audiences to your brand. And we're that village. I'm Alyssa.
I'm Paulina.
And I'm Rachel.
And you're listening to Great Events, the podcast for all people interested in events and marketing. Hello, everyone. We are here to talk about what's been going on in this wide world of events. My name is Alyssa. Most of you guys know me by now, but I will be your sole host for today's Great Events podcast. Today, I am joined by quite a number of new faces on our episode for today. 3 awesome Cventers who I actually have not done a lot of work with, in fact, no work with in the past. Cvent, as you can imagine, is quite a big organization, and so we've got new faces coming into the fold at all times. But I'm excited to introduce our 3 guest panelists, if you want to call them today. I was going to say podcasters, fellow podcasters. I'm joined by Charlie Friend. He's an analyst on our sales operations team under our Event Cloud division. We've also got Mackenzie Regan here. She's a team lead on our sales operations division. She's more exclusively aligned to our enterprise division. And then lastly, we have Kevin McNeil. He is also a team lead on our sales operations team, but he serves our hospitality cloud. Now, what's interesting about these 3, before I have them talk a little bit more about themselves, is that they just went to a major industry event last week. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with, Dreamforce. And because of their role at Cvent and their affiliation with our sales function, they got to attend Dreamforce as attendees. So really soaking in all of the content, all of the programming. I know that Paulina and Rachel, had they been able to join, we'd be talking a lot about how this event is really the pinnacle. It's kind of the mothership, if you will, of all B2B events. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce everybody, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the experience that these 3 teammates of mine had at Dreamforce and how some of those learnings might be infused or reflected into your own event programs moving into the future because of the impact that Salesforce and Dreamforce just have on B2B event trends. So with that, I'm going to go round clockwise around the screen here. Mackenzie, I'm going to start with you. So if you'd like to come off mute, if you're on mute, open up the dialogue with you, Mackenzie, and introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about your role at Cvent and also kind of your experience at Dreamforce. Was this the first time? Have you gone many times? Let me know about that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alyssa. I am Mackenzie. I have been at Cvent for 7 years, specifically on the sales operations team for the last 2 years. I was in sales for my first 5 at Cvent. So this was actually my first conference I've attended where I was purely an attendee, not having to work a booth, not having to have appointments, which was itself a very cool experience. The fact that it was Dreamforce was unbelievable, to be totally honest. But yeah, so my role in a nutshell is doing the behind the scenes work for our enterprise division sales team, whether that is implementing contracts, creating new processes to make the team more efficient, a whole slew of things that I know Charlie and Kevin can attest to. We kind of have our hands in a lot of cups, working with many divisions of the company. So for us to go with our lens from that perspective of we touch many different divisions of our organization, trying to make sure we are like the eyes and ears of our own cloud so that whatever's happening in different departments is working with what our team has going on. And we, all 3 of us, work in Salesforce and with our CRM team. I would say that's probably 60 to 70% of my job is working with enhancements with our CRM team and adjusting Salesforce to what it needs to be so we can progress and move forward and make more sales.
Very nice. So first time attendee at Dreamforce, very much a user lens. So of course, Dreamforce, I would honestly say started as a user conference. It still is a user conference, but it's extended even beyond that, right? There's so much happening at that. It's really this kind of moment for B2B, but sounds like Mackenzie, very much a user in that way too. So learning, I'm trying to put yourself in the attendee shoes and kind of how there'd be synergies between what some of our listeners might do too. So Charlie, let's go with you.
I'm Charlie, analyst on the mid-market sales team. I've been with CVET for about a year. And before CVET, I was also in sales, but at a different organization. And this was actually the first sort of big conference or event that I've ever been to. And so, yeah, it was really awesome to get to, that it got to be Dreamforce. And like Mackenzie said, a lot of my work as well, maybe 70% and up focuses on Salesforce and just sort of how we can improve our Salesforce instance so that our sales team can sell the best they can. So yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Cool. We'll get into all those details in just a bit. Okay, last up at bat, Kevin, let me know about yourself.
My name is Kevin. I work for the sales operations team, specifically on the hospitality cloud. I've been in that role for about 5 to 6 years. I was actually part of Lanyon right out of college, and was on the Lanyon renewals team for about a year and a half before the merger, and then thankfully just fell into sales operations. And I didn't really know it was what I wanted, but I met some great people. I found a solid career path. So, and similar to Mackenzie and Charlie, we all have very similar roles just for different divisions. I would say I focus at least like 80% of my time on Salesforce. So I was looking to soak up anything that we could to help improve what we're doing today. And we've got some other major projects that are ongoing that we were just looking to see what insight we could get to make those smoother and improve the process entirely for sales. And this was my first major event as well. I hadn't even really been to Connect yet. So never really the need in sales operations to go to Connect, but this was obviously a lot more down my alley. And I think it was an incredible experience for sure.
Okay, that's a really good transition, Kevin. You mentioned soaking things up. And so as event planners and event professionals, I think that's their job, is to make things soakable, like for you to be able to take all that goodness in. So was there anything unique in the experience or kind of that you'd never seen before in an event? I know, Kevin, you had just said that, this really is kind of one of the first events that you've attended in at least a really long time. But was there anything that just really was super inspiring or just was so unique about that experience that made learning just so much easier at Dreamforce?
Yeah. A couple of things stand out immediately. The one thing that we all talked about consistently was their commitment to their theme. So the Trailblazer theme is everything that they do is based off of, blazing your own trail. And so their online community, Trailhead, the certifications that you can earn, the titles that you can get, they're all around that. And so even at the event, there was the way the Moscone Center works. There's 3 buildings with like a center point. And that whole center point was themed as a forest, like you're blazing a trail through a forest. Everything was around that theme. I think that was certainly an awesome idea. I think it worked perfectly. All of the prizes that they gave were theme related. Everything stuck to that, which, in my opinion, just to kind of go back to your question, it inspired me to want to join their community, their Trailhead community. I've done a little bit in that, not fully, but I definitely plan to do more. They have lessons, they have certifications, they have everything that you can do just to better yourself for your job or even just personally. So that was really how I felt just overall.
That's really interesting because we don't often talk about, we kind of disconnect branding and creative elements from the event programming. And what's fascinating to me and what you're just talking about, Kevin, is how that branding and the creative elements and what we would kind of put into kind of the fluffier side of the conference, right? Is what was kind of a conduit for that. It was what packaged it all up and made you feel like you were part of something bigger. And I know I've heard anecdotal stories about Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, having like ripped down signage from one of the sides of Moscone Center, like 24 hours, and having it completely reprinted because it was literally like one hint of the wrong color of their branding. So we know that they're pretty tyrannical about that stuff, but and that might be to the extreme on the spectrum, right? But that commitment to that type of branding and the messaging and all of that kind of the packaging really does leave you with something. And it's interesting that you have a direct actionable takeaway from that, which was you want to do more within their community. What about you, Mackenzie? Anything that was really inspiring, or just as you're reflecting on last week that you're just kind of, we're going with the theme of soaking things up, so that you're just kind of soaking up this week as you come back from the event?
Exactly to Kevin's point, the theme had you just so immersed the entire time. You wanted to see every single facet of the event because of how much detail was put into it. To Kevin's point, the theme of, I think it was Dreamforce National Park was like the official theme, which obviously fit in perfect with their already existing branding of Trailhead and things like that. So kind of the fact that all of that could come together was just like, it felt like branding dream. But alongside of that too was their huge discussion point of sustainability and what they are doing to be, like, as an organization, and then also specifically for Dreamforce to help the environment. What was it? A fact that they repeatedly mentioned was they did not include beef, pork, or almonds at the conference, which saved 10 million gallons of water. So kind of doubling down on that. And they didn't offer, there was some swag in some like divisional parts of the conference, but they didn't do like major swag for everybody like they've done in the past, in a commitment to being more sustainable. And they said, instead of that, if you go to our, almost like they had an entire section devoted to like what they're doing for the planet and how Salesforce is making a difference, you could go to that part of the conference and get your travel, like you could get a voucher for your travel basically to help offset some of those costs instead of swag. So it's their commitment to the theme while also practicing what they preach as well. Of they did many actionable things at the conference that brought it together of like, we are walking the walk as well of trying to save this planet too.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's definitely one that we'll want to keep an eye on, because those types of decisions and their conference planning experience certainly have a ripple effect on just broader conference. And we have talked about sustainability, and how much of an impact that meetings and events have on just carbon footprint at large. But the fact that Salesforce and Dreamforce in its kind of conference manifestation are acting on that now will kind of set the tone and the pace, certainly for the North American market. We know that the UK and Europe are a lot farther ahead of North America, but it seems like there's a lot of effort being put towards sustainable initiatives right now. And if Salesforce is taking a stance, certainly there will be a domino effect. So that's a really interesting takeaway, Mackenzie. Anything that you thought was really cool from an activations or a networking experience that you noted on site?
The opening keynote, in my opinion, was impressive. It was a good mix of I think it was just 2 hours. And it was a good mix of things. Like there was Lenny Kravitz played 2 songs, which not a B-lister, obviously, but that's another person in there. They had Matthew McConaughey just sitting by the stage. And then they
just
had
a
good
plant,
mix.
just a subtle plant.
Yeah, he was just hanging out. And he obviously had a speaking session later in the conference, but he was just hanging out there. And then they had like it was like a Hawaiian ritual dance. And then they had a song, or the songs from Lenny. And then they had one really inspiring story from my perspective, just because of how realistic it is. There are a lot of stories that you think may be fabricated, but this is about a refugee that moved to the Netherlands and just learned Salesforce through their Trailhead community and got a job and ended up buying a house.
Wow.
And if you actually know anything about how Salesforce works, that is very realistic. You can learn everything in Salesforce. You can get certified, and that job is Salesforce is huge. Everyone's buying it, and so that job is certainly, it's almost like a trade at this point. To have that as a skill, to just say you're Salesforce certified would get you in the door at a lot of places.
Was that customer? Were they speaking on stage?
Yeah, she did speak.
We know that, and I know that this is like a big thing that Dreamforce emphasizes, is this kind of customer first mentality. I think that's a huge takeaway for a lot of our listeners, is the more that you can get that kind of firsthand account from whether you're a technology company or not, right? We know that there's people beyond this, but your constituents, your delegates, those types of individuals, that kind of personal touch being reflected in on your keynote stage has been a huge, I'd say, theme or kind of industry trend that Salesforce has really prompted, is really making your customers the highlight and the star of your event, which is essentially free, right? Like, we can talk about Matthew McConaughey, we can talk about all of these big name people, but the fact, Kevin, that you are saying this was one of the major takeaways. It's like Matthew McConaughey and Lenny Kravitz, and then this amazing Salesforce certified individual who was a refugee. That was the free speaker, right? That Salesforce probably didn't have to invest other than flights and costs like that to get them there. That's a real actionable thing that I think a lot of organizations listening today can do, is adopt that customer first mentality. You don't need to have a massive budget to get Matthew McConaughey to speak at your conferences, to have your audiences like you guys leaving with a real impression from your event. So that's huge to me. Even that you just noted that, Kevin, I think is a major takeaway for me. Charlie, I want to incorporate you into the conversation. So what was your kind of like your big moment, your big takeaway from the conference? What was kind of the most exciting thing to you?
I think one thing they did a really good job of doing is there were a lot of, they obviously had the sessions where you could get a lot of great information, but then they had a lot of either interactive sessions or stations set up where you could sort of apply a little bit of what you were learning and hearing about. So, for example, one session that I really enjoyed was about Salesforce flows. And then later I was able to, just go and work with a member of their team on the exhibition floor and just, work on like setting those up and try a lot of different stuff. So they did a lot of great job presenting stuff and then giving you an opportunity to engage with it and sort of play with it as well.
Was that program, so let's call it like the sandbox activity, like the part where you got to play with the things after the fact, was that kind of time-based, or was that kind of evergreen content? It was always available to you as an action?
Evergreen. They just had they had it was in the Trailblazer Forest section, which, like Kevin said, was themed with all the paths and whatnot, and you could just go up to any station and they would just have a sign that said, this is focused on flows, this is focused on reporting, and you could just go and talk with them and run through demos or practice some and build some of those skills yourself, which I thought was really cool.
I love that. I love that idea, because there's a big conversation that we have at Cvent now, is this notion of, continuing the event experience, but even within your event conversation or even within your event content, you have the capability to extend that beyond, let's say, your session times, right? It's not just a one and done. It's how do you have people turn some of this dialogue into action, even on site too. And it sounds like Salesforce does a really good job with that by activating their exhibitor hall. What's the exhibitor hall called?
It was Trailblazer campground. It felt like you were in a forest.
Very cool. All themed, all parks. Okay, so just in the interest of technology, right? Because Cvent's a technology provider, and we know that obviously Salesforce is as well. I'm really curious if there were any interesting ways that Dreamforce incorporated maybe digital experiences, or perhaps their app had some unique features on it that were notable. Anybody want to take that?
There wasn't a ton that we saw as physical attendees for the virtual. They mentioned the people listening, but I think there were a few cool things about their app that I think were really valuable. Like Charlie told this to us like midway through the second day, that the sessions on the app, you had a note-taking side. You could go into the session, take notes, and then export that. And it looks like that turned into a really helpful document for Charlie. But then also one of the other things, and this kind of leads into one of my other talking points back to the session. I don't want to detract too much, but it's okay. I think was valuable. But for the time slots that you had, the sessions, there was obviously 40-minute gaps or 20-minute gaps, or it depends. There was just a way to click and see what sessions were there and filter down, and you could quickly see what else you could do with your open time. But one of the other things that I found really valuable about the setup itself was these theater formats where they had themed theaters. So there was a sales theater, an admin theater, and it kind of goes to Charlie's first point, but I I would be in between sessions and I would just stop by the admin theater and see what's playing there and listen to that and engage in that because I was interested, or the sales theater, whatever it was. I just think that was a great way to incorporate some of that lost time or open time. And then if you have specific areas that you wanted to focus on, you could just hang out there and see what sessions are coming up next. I thought it was.
Yeah, it was kind of like home base for your programming, right? That's actually a good transition because I had a question related. It was what you were talking about, Charlie, kind of like finding what you needed to find in the content and you're sitting in on certain sessions. Did you guys find that you stayed pretty true to like one track? Or did you kind of bop around in different areas? Because there's so much content at this event, right? So I'm curious, like how you guys navigated your personal experiences, other than obviously using technology as an assistant. Like, how did you actually construct your agenda getting to that event?
There were over 1,200 sessions, or between 11 and 1,200. So wow. We actually, the three of us knew we wanted to just get as much in as possible. So we kind of divided and conquered and each looked at the sessions for ourselves, filtering down by roles, keywords, departments, things like that. Kind of did an initial list of like, okay, let's favorite everything that we are interested in. And then we regrouped and did a second round where we like specifically bookmarked and added to our agenda the ones that we wanted, where some of them were overlapping because obviously we have similar roles, but a lot of the times we work closer with different departments than others. So we were able to split off for those as well. But yeah, it did take some planning. We wanted to make sure we got the most of our time, and 1,100 sessions is overwhelming, but we were definitely more on like a sales admin track, a little bit of a hybrid of both, which took us like all over the conference as well, which was nice.
That's cool. And so they had unique experiences for sales versus admin, but you guys kind of found yourselves as a blend. And you weren't, because some organizations are still very track focused, and they make you kind of pick a ticket and stick with it. But it seems like Dreamforce allows you to kind of do a little bit of an a la carte experience, should you want to do that, right? So
absolutely,
that's in part why it took so long to plan. Did you find that there were things that you missed out on that you would have wanted to see, or you were kind of double booked in a lot of spaces?
I would say definitely. And one of the things that I don't want to say is a con, but it was just something that was a little bit difficult to navigate. There are 3 buildings and a lot of people that were navigating in between them. So what we would do is if most of McKinsey's sessions were in Moscone West and most of mine were in Moscone South, I would sacrifice some of the ones that I originally intended on planning and stay in that building, so I didn't have to worry about missing the start of meetings or anything like that. So, but there was definitely, I had 4 sessions blocked at the same time, so there was definitely some overlap there, and that's obviously a good problem to have. But
is there any ability to like capture or get any of that content on demand after the fact so you could watch it if you wanted, or is that not available?
I believe so. We got an email today about going back to on demand. It honestly wasn't super clear, but I think it would be very valuable to do that for any event. I would imagine they've done most of it. As McKinsey said, I think there were 1,200 sessions. And just from a quick skim of the email that we got today, I think it said there were 200 sessions on demand. So they probably recorded a lot. And of those 1,200, there were duplicates there, the same meeting 2 or 3 times. So they probably recorded most of them. And one of the cool things, at the end of every session, there was a QR code that you could scan. And it would take you to the information that you needed to learn more about that functionality or that company or whatever it may be. So I know a lot of us took notes, and I've got 50 pictures on my phone, just taking pictures of slides and things like that to go back and find some more information on. So.
Okay, so in the interest of time, because I don't want us to run too long on this, I'd like to do a round robin. Everyone's just kind of parting words, final takeaways, best part, most exciting thing. Can't wait to go back next year moment. So Mackenzie, I'll start with you. We'll go around the clock again.
Kind of I know I touched on this before, but it's actually like a passion of mine, but I really, the sustainability aspect and like the real cohesiveness of the event, it really makes you feel so much more immersed, to Kevin's point, in the Salesforce community. In sessions, they always highlight like who here's a trailblazer, who's an awesome admin. Like they, like you mentioned, highlight their customers so much. It makes you want to be more engaged and see what everybody else is learning. And definitely cool to see how Salesforce what do we always say, eats their own dog food, and how we use all of their tools and how they put it into practice as well. So I'm really excited to go back next year. The releases that they had, a bunch of general releases on site, a lot coming later this year and into next year. I think that like the company is just overall moving in such a great direction, both like as a product and also just as like contributing to the world and society of where we're going as people. So I just feel more connected to Salesforce and like committed to try to learn what they have to say.
Yeah, that's amazing. They've made even more of an advocate out of you than, and I think that's the power of events, right? Is especially when you get to go and attend something in person, you just feel that connection. There's this moment of intensity that you just can't replicate in a virtual environment. Even though you're a daily user, you're on it for hours and hours on end, you get this little spark plug, and that's the power of the event experience that gave that to you. So I think that's pretty unique, and not just something that Dreamforce facilitates, but certainly something that conference experiences across can do. All right, Charlie, what's your big takeaway?
I think they did a really good job of having a balance of stuff that was available then, stuff that's going to be available in the near future, and presenting stuff that might not be available until next spring or fall. And it just it was a great balance of learning stuff, the cool stuff that's available now, and just keeping you excited for the future, so that you'll be more engaged and you'll keep following up and checking those forums to see what's coming out. And would be really excited to go next year as well.
Yeah, that notion of kind of teasing out things and keeping you on the hook, right? Like they don't want you to drop off, and of course, like you're a major advocate, but it's kind of like, okay, we've got the breadcrumbs now that are leading you to come next year and to celebrate all the success. That's awesome. All right, Kevin, last one.
Not much more I can say beyond what they said. It did leave me feeling connected to Salesforce, more of an advocate. I definitely will spend time after I catch up on work, spend time on Trailhead and learning. And that's one of the major takeaways for me. I do think it's kind of hard to leave a conference with a lot of action items and a lot of actually clear things to use. And I feel differently about this. Maybe it's because the easier I make our Salesforce, the less painful my job is. So I think it was incredibly valuable, and I want to go every year just to see what's upcoming, see how we can make sales jobs easier and make our jobs easier as well.
Did you find that conversations with other users helped propel that? Obviously, we talked a lot about the branding and just kind of the overall feel that the conference producers provide. But did you find just kind of the like literally rubbing elbows with people was helping to facilitate that too?
It was certainly interesting to see like some of the problems that we have, other people are experiencing, and even some of the major problems that I'm deep in right now. Salesforce had those on their roadmap to fix. So it was certainly comforting. And then they had a type of session called Circle of Success, where everyone that was attending would get in a circle and talk. I personally didn't attend one of those. I kind of wish I had, but I think Mac and Charlie did, if they want to comment on how those went.
It was very on the nose for Steve-N. It was called Decluttering Your Org. Yes, decluttering your org, which we all know our Salesforce has a lot of data in it that is old and outdated. So it was 40 minutes facilitated of you at a table with 6 people. They would kind of chat for 5 minutes of like, okay, how do we get here? How did this happen? How does all this clutter happen? What are the issues that you see? Okay, here are steps to fix it. These are different ways that you have today to identify this clutter. How do you use it? So every 5 minutes, we would go into a 10-minute roundtable session where you'd get anecdotes about what other people were experiencing. Exactly to Kevin's point, very similar to us. And folks using, I know Charlie, we took down, some people were telling us different tools that they were using about deduping contacts and things like that. So we were taking notes on not only what the session speaker was saying, but also what our colleagues were as well, of what they were doing personally in their organization.
Yeah, it sounds like it was very solutions focused, but crowdsourced solutions, and also Salesforce acknowledging that, I don't want to say it's not perfect, but use case of Cvent. Let me just take Salesforce brand and just slap Cvent on top. But yeah, that no one's doing this perfectly, or that everybody has problems, and so if everybody addresses these problems, it's a catharsis of some sort. And that makes you feel like you're not alone, and arguably less frustrated in your day-to-day when you recognize that, okay, this isn't just my company's problem. A lot of people are dealing with, so we can get through this together, or we can grunt through this together if that's what you have to do. But I appreciate you guys so much for joining. Mackenzie, Kevin, Charlie, thank you so much for relaying all of these perspectives and these insights from Dreamforce. I know oftentimes when Dreamforce comes up in conversation, especially within a planning setting, the first reaction is those budgets are outrageous and we almost want to close our eyes and not hear about it. But I do think that based off of the dialogue that we had today, there's some takeaways that we can put into practice within our own programs moving forward, not just events, hosted events, but all of our listeners' events. There are certain things that Dreamforce does that are free, and it's just a mindset or a mentality, and it's adopting that and infusing that into your own program. So I really appreciate you guys talking about your experience and allowing me to react for our listeners. So can't thank you enough. All right. So we too hope that you enjoyed the chat, listeners, and or found some inspiration or kind of quick takeaways from this conversation. We hope that we left you with some of those, and that you'll move towards a more Dreamforce-like event in the future if you have a conference in your total event program. And as always, we do want to know what's going on with you. Shoot us a message on LinkedIn, DM us on Instagram, or go ahead and send us a note at our email inbox, greatevents@cvent.com. And we look forward to featuring you or your questions on an upcoming episode. My name is Alyssa, and thanks for tuning to Great Events. See you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Great Events, a podcast by Cvent. If you want more resources on how to make your events great, go to community.cvent.com. That's community.cvent.com. Or if you've got a question for us or just want to say hi, email us at greatevents@cvent.com.